that borders on addiction. He is drawn not to her silence as such, but to the mystery it conceals. Where there is no resistance, no boundary, desire collapses into indifference. But where there is distance, where there is a veil, the imagination is stirred, and the pursuit begins. The woman becomes not an object to be taken, but a riddle to be encountered. It is in this tension between presence and absence that longing deepens, and longing, once awakened, becomes difficult to extinguish. Yet the deeper truth is this: the right way to ignore is never about the man at all. It is about the woman's relationship to herself. When she ignores in the right way, she is not playing a game, but affirming her own center. She is refusing to dissolve into the projections of another. She is declaring that her life, her time, her energy are not endlessly available. In this self-possession lies her magnetism. A woman who belongs to herself, who does not abandon her depths to satisfy another's surface desire, becomes irresistible. Not because she tries to be, but because wholeness cannot help but attract. The man chases not only the woman but what she represents, the part of his own soul that he has not yet integrated. Her withdrawal forces him to confront the emptiness within himself, the hunger he cannot satisfy without turning inward. This is why her silence haunts him. It is not merely her absence he feels, but his own incompleteness. The pursuit becomes compulsive because it is not only about her. It is about him, about the parts of himself he has projected onto her and now must reclaim. To ignore in the right way is thus an act of wisdom. It is not a rejection of love, nor is it a denial of intimacy. It is a recognition that true connection cannot be built on demand or consumption. By holding her ground, by refusing to give herself away cheaply, the woman teaches the man the value of what he seeks. And in this way, ignoring becomes not cruelty but initiation, a call for the man to rise, to grow, to step beyond instinct into the realm of genuine encounter. So when a woman learns to ignore a man the right way, she does not become less radiant but more. She stands as a sovereign being, withholding not to wound, but to protect the sanctity of her essence. And it is precisely this sovereignty, this refusal to be consumed, that draws him like an addict, not to her weakness, but to her strength, not to her compliance, but to her mystery. Ignoring in the right way is not an act of hostility, nor is it a tactic of manipulation. It is the art of withholding projection, the conscious choice to not feed the images that others attempt to place upon you. A woman often becomes the canvas upon which a man paints his desires, fears, and unintegrated aspects of his psyche. When she is constantly available, when she responds to every call, every demand, she allows these projections to flourish unchecked. She becomes less of herself and more of what he wishes her to be. But when she ignores in the right way, she interrupts this process. She denies the automatic gratification of his expectations, and in doing so, she forces him to encounter the tension of reality rather than the ease of illusion. This withholding is not about cruelty but about protection of her essence. Attention is a sacred currency, and when given too freely, it loses its weight. Many fail to realize that what makes attention precious is not its abundance but its rarity. A woman who honors her attention understands that it is not merely a casual gesture, but a reflection of her inner energy, her psychic life, her time, and her soul's vitality. By ignoring in the right way, she signals that her essence is not a commodity. She shows that her gaze, her presence, her words must be earned, not consumed like an inexhaustible supply. To ignore in this sense is to reframe the dynamic of power. So often relationships become skewed when one party grants endless attention, while the other takes it for granted. Desire thrives on polarity, on the dance between presence and absence. If there is only presence, if there is no boundary, desire collapses into apathy. The man ceases to feel the pull, because nothing is withheld from him. He has no need to pursue, for there is no resistance. But when she withdraws her attention, when she does not affirm his every move, a void emerges. Into this void flows his longing, his imagination, his restless hunger. He is compelled to seek again what he thought was secure. The right kind of ignoring is not passive indifference but active sovereignty. It is the conscious decision to step back, to hold energy within, to not allow another to dictate the rhythm of one's life. A woman who practices this understands the subtle language of boundaries. She knows that her silence can speak louder than words, that her absence can create a presence more powerful than constant affirmation. She does not explain, justify, or plead. She simply chooses where to place her focus. This quiet self-possession awakens in the man an acute awareness of what he is missing. On a psychological level, ignoring disrupts the cycle of projection. A man often projects onto a woman an idealized image of comfort, mothering, or unending attention. When she withholds that, when she does not step into the role he unconsciously demands, he must confront the emptiness within himself. He begins to sense that what he seeks cannot be endlessly supplied by another. The lack he feels is not merely her absence but his own incompleteness, the unresolved parts of his soul that he has attempted to externalize. By ignoring in the right way, the woman refuses to collude with this illusion. She refuses to carry what is not hers to carry. There is, within this act, a deeper wisdom. For ignoring in the right way is not about games or strategies, but about truth. It is about refusing to pretend that one's essence can be owned or consumed. It is about standing as a whole being, not as a reflection of another's needs. When she withholds attention, she is not punishing him, she is protecting herself from dissolution. She is declaring that her life is not to be dictated by his whims, that her energy is not an endless wellspring for his use. This declaration, though unspoken, resonates in every silence, in every absence, in every moment where she does not rush to affirm him. And paradoxically, it is this very withholding that ignites his pursuit. When the illusion of ownership is broken, when he no longer feels entitled to her gaze, desire returns. The chase begins not because she is manipulating him, but because she has restored the balance of polarity. Her absence becomes a magnet, her silence becomes an invitation, her refusal to be consumed becomes the very thing that draws him closer. He finds himself restless, unsettled, compelled to seek what he cannot automatically have. The addiction arises not from her compliance, but from her refusal. This pattern echoes across myths and archetypes. The unattainable goddess, the veiled priestess, the mysterious queen, all embody the principle that what is truly valuable cannot be seized at will. Their power lies not in offering themselves freely to every demand, but in guarding their essence, in choosing when and how to reveal themselves. The woman who ignores in the right way steps into this archetypal role. She does not deny her power, she refines it by restraint. She allows mystery to surround her, and in that mystery the man discovers both his longing and his limits. To ignore in the right way is therefore to embody a rare form of discipline. It requires the strength to resist the impulse to please, the courage to endure another's dissatisfaction, and the clarity to recognize one's own worth. Many falter because they confuse attention with love, and in their eagerness to be loved, they give too much. But love cannot be sustained by endless giving alone. It requires balance, tension, and polarity. By ignoring in the right way, by stepping back, the woman creates the very conditions under which authentic desire can grow. What makes this so powerful is that it is not a tactic directed outward, but a practice rooted inward. The focus is not on making him chase, but on reclaiming the self. When a woman learns to ignore in the right way, she is in fact learning to prioritize her energy, to guard her inner life, to not squander her presence on those who have not earned it. The man's chase is simply the consequence, the natural response to encountering a presence that cannot be consumed at will. It is not she who plays the game, but he who feels compelled to pursue what he cannot fully possess. This is why ignoring in the right way transforms the dynamic so profoundly. It shifts the focus from endless availability to sacred presence, from passive compliance to active sovereignty, from illusion to truth. The woman who understands this principle does not harden herself into indifference, nor does she yield to constant demands. She chooses silence when necessary, distance when needed, boundaries when required, and in this choice, she teaches that her attention is a gift, not a guarantee, a treasure to be sought, not an entitlement to be assumed. True magnetism arises not from effort, not from striving to impress or seduce, but from a woman's rootedness in her own being. When she is centered in herself, when she no longer feels the need to dissolve into another's demands, she radiates a presence that is undeniable. This kind of magnetism cannot be manufactured, for it does not depend on techniques or strategies. It emerges naturally from a state of inner wholeness. A woman who knows her worth, who has faced herself and found strength in her solitude, carries an aura that draws others without her having to move toward them. So many women are taught that to attract love, they must give endlessly, adapt ceaselessly, and mold themselves to the expectations of others. They learn to anticipate a man's desires before he speaks them, to soothe his fears, to soften his insecurities, to become pliant and accommodating. But what is gained in such self-abandonment is never true magnetism. It may secure attention for a time, but it is an attention built on dependence, not on respect. It feeds the man's surface appetite, but it starves the woman's soul. The deeper truth is that when she loses herself to satisfy him, she becomes invisible, not radiant. Magnetism dies when essence is compromised. Rootedness in self-possession means that a woman no longer seeks her identity in the gaze of another. She knows that her value does not increase or decrease according to the recognition she receives. This self-possession is not arrogance but clarity, a quiet knowing that her life is hers to live, her energy hers to direct, her soul hers to protect. In this clarity, she becomes immovable by external pressures. She can engage deeply with a man without dissolving into him. She can love without abandoning herself. She can give without losing her center. And it is precisely this immovability that magnetizes him, for it creates a polarity he cannot resist. A man may think he wants a woman who bends to his will, who answers every call, who exists only in orbit around him. But over time, such availability becomes suffocating and desire wanes. What truly captivates him, what draws him again and again, is the presence of a woman who cannot be swallowed whole. When she maintains her individuality, when she protects her boundaries, when she resists the temptation to disappear into his needs, she becomes a mystery. He feels her strength, her independence, her wholeness, and he is compelled toward it, even if he cannot name why. Magnetism, then, is inseparable from mystery, and mystery cannot exist where there are no boundaries. When everything is given, when nothing is withheld, when a woman exposes all of herself without discrimination, the sacredness of her being is diluted. But when she remains rooted in her own life, when she keeps a part of herself veiled, when she allows distance to coexist with intimacy, she awakens desire at its deepest level. The man is drawn not to an object of gratification, but to a subject who possesses herself. He feels her strength as both challenge and invitation, and this awakens the archetypal pursuit within him. Self-possession also protects against the danger of dependency. When a woman relies on a man's approval for her sense of worth, she becomes enslaved to his moods, his choices, his recognition. She loses the ability to stand firmly in her own truth. But when her roots sink deep into her own being, she is no longer swayed by whether he notices or not, whether he praises or criticizes, whether he stays or leaves. This inner freedom is the foundation of magnetism, for nothing is more compelling than someone who does not need you, yet chooses to engage with you. A man senses this independence, and it awakens both respect and desire within him. The woman who is rooted in self-possession carries herself differently. She does not chase validation. She does not plead for attention. She does not bargain with her essence. Instead, she becomes a center of gravity, calm and assured. Her presence speaks of someone who knows her depths, who has walked through her own shadows, who does not fear standing alone. This presence cannot be faked, for it arises from lived experience, from the trials of solitude, from the courage of self-discovery. It is the kind of radiance that shines quietly but irresistibly, like a flame that needs no wind to be seen. Such magnetism does not shout, it whispers. It does not force itself outward, it draws inward. A man finds himself circling her, curious, unsettled, compelled. He senses that she will not give herself away lightly, and this awakens in him a hunger that simple compliance could never sustain. Her boundaries create tension, and tension is the heartbeat of desire. It is not the promise of endless giving that captivates him, but the assurance that what she gives freely and consciously, without losing herself in the process. This principle is reflected in archetypes throughout human history. The goddess who commands devotion does not beg for worship. She stands in her own power, radiant and untouchable. The muse who inspires the artist does not pursue him. She remains in her own world, allowing him to come to her. The queen who rules does not abandon her throne to follow another's will. She draws him into her court on her terms. Each of these figures reveals the truth that magnetism is not born of surrendering sovereignty, but of embodying it. To refuse to dissolve into another's demands is not an act of defiance, but of preservation. It preserves the sacredness of one's being. It maintains the balance of polarity. It keeps alive the spark of mystery. In this refusal, the woman does not harden her heart. She protects its integrity. She does not reject intimacy. She insists that intimacy must honor both partners as whole beings. She does not withhold love. She simply refuses to confuse love with self-erasure, and in doing so, she becomes not less desirable, but infinitely more. The paradox is clear. The less she chases, the more he pursues. The less she bends, the more he yearns. The less she dissolves, the more he is drawn. For what captivates is not her compliance, but her wholeness, not her dependence, but her independence, not her willingness to be consumed, but her refusal to be reduced. True magnetism is not a performance but a state of being, and it belongs to the woman who has chosen to stand in herself fully, to live her life without apology, to exist in her own completeness, whether or not a man recognizes it. It is from this rootedness that all authentic attraction flows. The woman who has claimed herself does not need to shout her worth, for it speaks in every gesture, every silence, every boundary she upholds. Her presence says, "I am whole, I am sovereign, I am not yours to consume." And it is this presence that awakens the man's deepest longing, drawing him into pursuit, not because she withholds love, but because she embodies it without losing herself. A man's compulsion to chase does not arise merely from instinct or superficial attraction. It is born from the tension that distance creates. When a woman does not give herself completely, when she maintains a certain space that cannot be crossed at will, the man is thrown into a state of longing that feels both intoxicating and unsettling. This longing is not only about her physical presence, but about the mystery she represents. Mystery awakens the imagination, and imagination intensifies desire. When she is not constantly available, she becomes larger in his mind, magnified by the void her absence creates. It is in this void that the addictive quality of pursuit begins to take root, for he chases not only what is before him, but what he imagines lies hidden beyond her silence. Desire, by its very nature, thrives on tension. Where there is no resistance, where everything is immediately accessible, desire fades into familiarity, and familiarity soon becomes indifference. But where there is space, where there are boundaries that cannot be crossed without effort, desire flourishes. The man feels an ache within him, an ache that demands resolution, and so he pursues. This ache becomes compulsive because it points to something deeper than mere attraction. It touches the emptiness within his own psyche. He senses that the woman holds a key to something missing inside himself, though he cannot articulate what it is. Her distance does not repel him, it confronts him with his own incompleteness. The compulsion to chase, then, is not truly about her but about himself. She has become the mirror in which his own lack is reflected. In her absence, he confronts his inner void, the parts of his soul he has not integrated, the shadows he has not faced. He imagines that if only he could possess her fully, the emptiness would be filled. But the truth is that the emptiness belongs to him, not to her. Still, the illusion is powerful, and it drives him into relentless pursuit. The woman becomes the object of his projections, the vessel into which he pours his unmet needs and unclaimed aspects of his own being. This is why distance and boundaries awaken such powerful desire. They frustrate the unconscious belief that the other can be consumed like a resource. When she does not yield completely, she resists becoming his escape. Instead of dissolving into his demands, she forces him to feel the hunger that lies at his core. This hunger is what he chases, and because it cannot be easily satisfied, the chase feels addictive. He circles around her presence as if it were the center of gravity, pulled by a force that seems beyond his control. Yet what he is really circling is the void within himself. Throughout myth and history, the archetype of the unattainable woman has held power precisely because she awakens this confrontation. The goddess who remains veiled, the oracle who speaks only in riddles, the queen who cannot be approached without initiation. All of these figures symbolize the truth that the feminine, in its deepest form, cannot be consumed at will. They embody mystery, and in doing so, they compel the seeker to journey inward, to endure longing, to wrestle with the unknown. The man who encounters such a woman is not only pursuing her, he is being drawn into his own depths, forced to acknowledge the parts of himself he would rather avoid. Addiction arises here because the psyche resists this confrontation. Instead of turning inward to face the void, the man projects outward and clings more desperately to the woman as though she could save him from himself. Her silence becomes unbearable, her absence intolerable, her boundaries maddening. He is haunted by thoughts of her, consumed by the idea that possessing her will resolve the ache. Yet even when he moves closer, the ache persists, for it does not belong to her. It belongs to the unhealed, unclaimed, and unlived dimensions of his own soul. Her mystery merely awakens what was already there. From the woman's perspective, understanding this dynamic is essential. To give herself too easily, to erase distance in an effort to secure his attention, is to rob him of the very confrontation that makes him grow. When she maintains boundaries, she is not being cruel but true. She allows him to feel the hunger rather than numbing it with false gratification. She forces him to wrestle with himself, to recognize that desire cannot be satisfied by consumption alone. In this way, her distance becomes a form of initiation, calling him to rise beyond instinct into consciousness. The addictive quality of pursuit is also tied to the paradox of scarcity. What is always present is taken for granted, but what is withheld is magnified in value. The man feels this instinctively. The woman who does not dissolve into his every demand becomes rare in his perception, and rarity breeds desire. She is not rare because she hides, but because she refuses to abandon herself. Her self-possession, her mystery, her ability to remain rooted in her own life make her stand apart. He becomes addicted not to her compliance but to the challenge she represents, the possibility that by winning her attention he might also resolve his own incompleteness. Yet this compulsion, if left unconscious, can consume him. Addiction by its nature is blind, it chases without understanding. The man may find himself restless, anxious, even desperate in her absence, not realizing that what he is truly chasing lies within himself. The woman becomes the symbol of his inner wholeness, the lost part of his soul projected outward. He believes he is pursuing her, but he is in fact pursuing himself. This is why the chase feels endless, why no amount of closeness ever seems enough. For until he turns inward, until he reclaims the parts of himself he has projected, the hunger will remain. The woman, by maintaining her boundaries, does not resolve this hunger for him. She cannot. But she can embody the truth that she is not the answer to his void. By refusing to dissolve, she silently teaches him that wholeness cannot be found outside oneself. Her presence awakens his longing, but her distance reminds him that the work must be his own. This is the paradox of her magnetism. It both draws him and denies him, both compels and confronts. In this tension, his growth becomes possible if he has the courage to turn the pursuit inward. Thus, the compulsion to chase is more than instinctual drive. It is a symbolic drama playing out between the masculine and the feminine, between projection and reality, between desire and the void. The woman's distance awakens the archetypal pursuit, but it also reveals to the man his own incompleteness. He chases her like an addict because she stirs the hunger he has long buried. Yet the deeper truth is that she is not the cure for this hunger. She is the mirror that reflects it back to him, calling him to confront the emptiness he carries within himself. Ignoring becomes an initiation because it shifts the dynamic from instinct to consciousness, from unconscious reaction to deliberate encounter. When a woman ignores a man in the right way, she is not simply withholding for the sake of power. She is creating a space in which he must confront himself. Instinct drives him toward immediacy, toward gratification, toward the consumption of what is easily accessible. But initiation requires him to step beyond instinct, to learn patience, to tolerate the tension of longing, and to recognize that genuine connection cannot be seized on demand. Her silence becomes the threshold, her absence the trial, her boundary the gateway through which he must pass if he wishes to engage with her essence. In the ancient mysteries, initiation always involved deprivation, uncertainty, and the confrontation with one's own shadow. The initiate was stripped of what was familiar and forced into darkness, where the old patterns of comfort could not sustain him. Only through enduring this tension could he emerge transformed. The dynamic between man and woman mirrors this process when she chooses to ignore in the right way. Her withdrawal confronts him with uncertainty. Her distance denies him the comfort of her constant presence. In this deprivation, he must confront the parts of himself he would otherwise keep hidden. The hunger that rises within him is not only about her, but about his own unintegrated psyche, the emptiness he has long sought to avoid. By refusing to be endlessly available, the woman calls him upward. She communicates without words that her essence cannot be consumed like a trivial indulgence, that her being demands reverence and depth. This forces him to make a choice, remain bound to the lower instinct that seeks only to consume, or ascend into a higher mode of relating, one that honors mystery, patience, and true encounter. In this sense, her ignoring becomes a rite of passage. It separates those who seek only gratification from those who are willing to grow into the capacity for authentic intimacy. The addictive quality of his chase is transmuted into something deeper when he accepts the challenge. The hunger that once drove him blindly begins to serve as fuel for transformation. Instead of demanding her presence, he learns to dwell in absence. Instead of seeking to possess, he learns to respect boundaries. Instead of projecting his incompleteness onto her, he begins to recognize it as his own. In this way, her ignoring is not rejection but instruction. It teaches him the discipline of desire, the patience of pursuit, the humility of recognizing that the other is not an object to be taken but a soul to be encountered. This initiation cannot be bypassed. If she were to yield too quickly, to erase distance in order to soothe his longing, she would rob him of the very process that allows desire to mature into love. Without the trial of absence, Without the confrontation of boundaries, his instinct remains unrefined. He consumes without reverence, he takes without awareness, and the connection becomes shallow. By holding back, she compels him to slow down, to reckon with himself, to learn that intimacy is not the annihilation of boundaries, but their respectful navigation. Across archetypal symbols, this pattern repeats. The hero who seeks the hidden treasure must first endure trials. The seeker who approaches the oracle must first wait in silence. The lover who wishes to win the beloved must first prove his worth. Each story encodes the truth that genuine encounter requires initiation. The woman who ignores in the right way embodies this archetypal role. She does not withhold out of spite, but because she knows that what is given without challenge is rarely valued, and what is pursued without effort is quickly abandoned. Her silence creates the trial that awakens seriousness in him. Her absence demands that he rise above mere instinct. Her boundaries test whether he is ready for the depth she carries. The man who accepts this initiation experiences a shift in perception. The chase is no longer about conquest, but about transformation. He begins to see her not as a possession, but as a presence, not as an answer to his void, but as a partner in the journey of becoming. He recognizes that to encounter her essence, he must first encounter himself. The addictive compulsion softens into reverence, the hunger becomes aspiration, the pursuit evolves into devotion. This is the fruit of initiation, the capacity to meet another not from need alone, but from wholeness. For the woman, ignoring in this way requires great strength. It demands that she withstand his restlessness, his frustration, his attempts to draw her back into the realm of instinct. It requires her to trust that her silence is not emptiness but presence, that her boundary is not rejection but invitation to growth. She must resist the temptation to give herself away cheaply, to soothe his longing at the expense of her essence. By holding her ground, she affirms that intimacy with her is not casual, that her soul is not an object to be consumed, that her presence must be approached with seriousness. The paradox is that what feels to him like denial is in fact the deepest form of offering. She offers him the chance to evolve, to rise beyond compulsion, to step into the capacity for genuine intimacy. Few recognize this gift, for it comes clothed in silence and absence. But those who do find themselves transformed, for they discover that the woman they pursue is not only an external figure, but the mirror of their own inner work. Her ignoring becomes the catalyst for their integration, her absence the space in which their own soul is revealed. Thus, ignoring is not a tactic but a spiritual act. It honors the sacredness of the feminine by refusing to let it be consumed without reverence. It honors the growth of the masculine by demanding that it rise into maturity. It transforms pursuit into initiation, desire into discipline, instinct into consciousness. It is the silent trial that separates those who seek only the satisfaction of appetite from those who are ready to encounter another soul in truth. In this way, ignoring becomes not the end of connection, but the beginning of real intimacy, the threshold through which the man must pass if he wishes to meet the woman as she truly is rather than as his projections would make her.